What is up, everybody? This is another adventure outside the Demon Slayer universe, and now we are attacking the Titans. Let's get into the omnidirectional motifs and themes of Attack on Titan. And we are starting with a review of the newest episode of AOT, as well as looking forward to the end of Attack on Titan coming soon. I'm joined, of course, by my usual two.
I am looking forward to the end, but this one's definitely kind of bittersweet for me. This is I don't have a lot of claims to fame with the anime community, but Attack on Titan and Fruits Basket are the two that I remember when episode 1 came out, watching that and following along as it was coming out, and it's very strange because I think that the way that some people feel like they grew up with characters like Naruto or Luffy or whoever, this is kind of that for me. Obviously this is a bit darker subject matter to be growing up with, but it's like being with these characters for 10 years and now it's going to be over soon. It's kind of sad, but I am excited and I think that it's going to nail the landing, so I'm excited to talk in the meantime about this precursor to the end.
Hey everyone. Similar to Emily but different. Obviously I started anime in 2020, and Attack on Titan it's not my technical first anime. Technically that belongs to Yuri on Ice, but Attack on Titan was the first anime where I was like, okay, I want to watch anime. What should I start with? So it holds a special place in my heart as well. I've not been watching it nearly as long, so it's a little bit less bittersweet to see the ending, on the horizon. However, it still is a very special story that I hold very close to my heart, so I'm really excited to talk about it.
Yeah, for me, Attack on Titan was a little bit different. I didn't watch Attack on Titan until really late in the anime game. I had seen a lot of other things, so I think I saw this TikTok the other day where it was there's two camps of people. You start with Attack on Titan, and then you're nothing else compares, or you're wow, you watch 8 animes, and then you get to Attack on Titan, and then you're damn, this is great. So I'm in that second part there, but I have a Levi tattoo. I am a huge fan of the show. As most people say, it's a masterpiece, and I am right alongside them. But before we start, a requirement is we're all going to do our best Shinzo Sasageo, and I will be kicking this off. So here we go. Channeling Erwin. Here we go. Shinzo Sasageo!
All right. Okay. All right. Shinzo Sasageo!
Oh man, I feel like I'm gonna sound like a clown doing this next, but I gotta bust out the deep voice. All right. Shinzo Sasageo!
All right, Levi. Damn, that was pretty good. Damn, I feel like we would all be able to make the scouts just with that. No ODM training, no sword fighting, just our Sasageos.
2 push-ups maximum.
We're coming for our voice acting careers. What can we say?
Cool. With that off the table, let's get going. Where we left off, so we are starting Attack on Titan in kind of a weird position because we're kind of starting at the end. So just giving that quick recap, we ended that part of Season 4, Part 1 of Part 2 of 80,000 Parts Later. The rumbling is here, right? We ended that part of Season 4 with the rumbling coming from the sea, and we saw it with a horde of colossal titans approaching, no falter in sight. There's so much that led us here, but to start, do you think the rumbling was the right choice? Let's also talk about the rumbling and how it was portrayed and the sheer terror that a real rumbling would cause.
This is the question, isn't it? Was the rumbling the right choice? I don't think so. Obviously, it's a bit of a jump from where they were to where they presently are. However, do I kind of understand where Eren is coming from also as a character? Yes. There are a lot of comparisons and similarities that are drawn between this situation that Eren and the Eldians are having had dealt to them over centuries. There are definitely again real world comparisons here. So if the people who the Eldians symbolize had been given power and a choice like this to fight back after centuries of abuse and enslavement, almost would they have done it? anyone who's like pushed to that breaking point, like it's really hard to say whether they are able to successfully gauge what's right and wrong anymore, because everything that has ever been done to them is wrong and they haven't ever known anything else. So do I understand why he did it? Like, yes. Do I think that it was a big leap and something that still wouldn't be justified because, like, as he says, he's now doing the exact same thing as the other side? Like, yes, it's not correct. I mean, this is like the stuff of nightmares. Like, a real rumbling, I don't know. I don't even know. I feel that it also like symbolizes other things that have happened in history, like all combined things like the dropping of the atomic bomb. I was struck watching this episode again by like, yes, everybody's obviously getting crushed, but there was also a shot of like these bodies just like walking and like burning from the steam that was surrounding them. Like, it's horrific, and that is what war is like, for a lot of people, something that there's no coming back from. So I don't know. Was it right to me? Absolutely not. Did Aaron feel that it was right? I think so.
Such a loaded way to start the episode, Brian. Obviously, absolutely, I agree with Emily. I don't think the rumbling was right. You know, genocide is, in my opinion, never the answer because it's genocide. And, you know, in war, innocent lives are always taken for no reason. You know, these people that are just living their lives, and they don't have anything to do with the situation that we've seen unfold in front of us through like the show itself. And we see that in this opening sequence. We see these kids that are just, they're oppressed. They're, you know, kind of in the same shoes as Aaron and his family and friends, and you know, they get crushed. We see them die horrific deaths. To piggyback off of Emily's last statement saying that Aaron thinks that it was right, I don't think Aaron necessarily thought that it was right just based off of this opening scene. You know, you can see that he is apologizing over and over again to this kid that he knows he's going to kill in the future. And I feel like, you know, we might talk about this as we get later on in this episode. Everything that he is doing, like he's giving freedom to his friends to fight him, is because I think he kind of wants to be stopped. He doesn't want to have to do this. He just thinks that it is the necessary step to protect the people he loves, essentially. And it's hard because like the three of us are also manga readers, so like we know how everything goes down, and I know kind of a lot more of the why behind what's happening is happening. So I'll try not to be too spoilery, but I won't be spoilery at all. By the way, for those of you listening in who are anime onlys, you don't have to shut it off. I think that this decision is eating Aaron up, and he doesn't want to do it, but he, for some reason, instead of relying on his incredibly smart friends like Armin, or, you know, the idea to just take out the fleet, you know, in Marley so that they can't attack the island, he doesn't see those as necessary or something that's going to actually change things. So he has to go the extreme to protect the people he loves, but it still isn't right to just kill the entire world so that they can live.
You're tuning into this episode. I bet you didn't expect that to be the first question, but here we are nonetheless. No other way to start off the Attack on Titan episode and adventure. With that being said, of course, not the right choice, right? To kill the world over your own oppressions. Like we've kind of already discussed, there are a lot of innocent people who have no actual relation to it. A lot of very similar themes and motifs to modern day, with like current issues of like racism, oppression, classism, capitalism, you name it. A lot of these oppressive and really generation long systems and institutions that have marginalized people are really being reflected in this kind of dichotomy between the Marleyans and the Eldians. And I think Aaron is trying to make a statement or trying to push for the Eldian like freedom, and we're going to get in more of that later. But I think at this point, Aaron's like not seeing another option. And we know he has memories of the future. And at a certain point, he knew that this was going to happen. However, in my mind, if you know it's going to happen and you know the ultimate outcome of it happening, don't you think you would change it? I was like really thinking about it, and I don't think it's in Aaron's nature to change what he sees. I think he sees almost like a survival of the fittest kind of take to the world, And I think that's kind of what he's doing with the rumbling. But again, right choice, no. Genocide, wrong. However, I think Eren is trying to do the thing that he thinks will be best for Eldia in the long run. Does that actually work out? Probably not, because it's a cycle of hatred. And eventually, there comes a point in time where you have to break that cycle of hatred. Like, turning the corner and going away from that is really difficult. Like, in my experience, right? Like, as a gay man, like, I've experienced, like, oppression and hatred towards gay people. However, like, I have to be able to let go of that, knowing that there's going to be a day where eventually maybe we can break that. Like, I don't go out and saying, like, all homophobes, I'm coming for you. I mean, maybe more so, like, I will read you to filth and I will take you to the library and back. However, I'm not going to commit genocide against all homophobes because it's just not right. That's my take on it. We're going to get away from that heavy question now because I felt that in my entire body talking about that. Whew.
I mean, Attack on Titan is very heavy with narrative, so I don't think we'll ever get away from heavy questions with as long as we're doing this show.
No.
And that's important.
Oof.
I think it's a good thing to talk about, though.
Fair. All right. Well, going on to Ramsey. We saw at the beginning of season 3 he was being punished for stealing, right? Not the greatest thing, but now when we see him in the middle of the rumbling, he only has one hand and he's trying to help his family and friends burying the money. We also get that flashback, kind of as Hannah mentioned, where Eren is saving him from being beaten, and then he only starts to cry as he knows he will end up killing Ramsey due to the rumbling. Nonetheless, as he is doing so, we get that image of pure freedom as he floats through the clouds during the rumbling, depicting his freedom, or as he calls it, Yujire.
This show is so powerful, and there's so much, like I said, just like intense narrative, and I think it paints war so well. And it's been talking about, I just watched the second half of season 2 2 days ago with Jenna, and it's talking about all the way back then who's the real enemy. Irvin asked Eren the question that in season 1. It's been established so early on who is the real enemy. I think this is showing us just how much everyone is in the wrong, but also everyone has their convictions and everyone is in the right. And kind of going off of the question here, I guess, but I already kind of talked about this scene and how I feel like it shows that Eren really didn't want to do the rumbling. He felt like his future was already set. And in a way, I think that he's the least free of everyone in this story at this point, because he's seen the future, the memories of the future, and he's just acting upon what he saw rather than choosing to change his path, which I think he possibly could have if he really wanted to try. And that's why he's like telling this boy, I'm sorry, because he just went through like saving this boy, and he said, like, why should I save him? Oh, because I do it. Like I saw myself in the future doing it. And so he's like, okay, I can't change anything. But can he really not change anything? So I think, this scene, and of course this manga panel is considered one of the most like masterful manga panels in the history of manga. It was, so hyped up for the anime, and I think the anime did a really good job at it. And I'll be honest, I think there's a lot of different ways to interpret that scene, because he's reverted back to a child in this scene, and he reverts back to a child a lot in this episode, kind of back to that old Eren that was passionate and loud and just wanted to go on the other side of the wall and live as a free person. It's showing that like Eren is, what he's seeing is just this clear sky and these clouds. He's not seeing the destruction, and it's almost as if he's completely just disassociated from reality in the name of like feeling free. And that's why it tells me like he's actually not free, because in order for him to declare himself free, he's not seeing reality unfold in front of him, is kind of how I interpreted that scene.
Yeah, Attack on Titan goes for the gut every time. I remember reading these panels with Ramsey as well, and let me just start off by saying that the panels in the manga of this scene are exponentially more graphic than what the anime did as well, and I still think the anime is like pretty gruesome, but like these images in the manga are like absolutely haunting of what happens to this little boy. And that's the point. There's like this child who is experiencing prejudice. He is like an other. They keep calling him like a foreigner. They're saying he's like a pickpocket, which I don't even know if we necessarily find out that that's true. We just know that he and the other young boy are like trying to save money so that they can move on and find like better circumstances for themselves. Maybe he is a pickpocket. Who knows? The people that he's pickpocketing from are not necessarily good people either. So when it comes down to it, though, this is a child and somebody who is feeling that sting of that prejudice that's looking to hopefully find that freedom one way or another. So in a lot of ways, like, that's actually pretty similar to a young Eren who we see interspersed with this, you know, and there's this nice scene where Eren like rescues him from the adults that are beating him up, accusing him of this pickpocketing. And yet Eren's like, should I even do this? Like, does it even matter? Because I know what's going to happen to this kid in the future. And that's another good question, is like, should he have bothered to do that? Would this kid have, you know, having been beaten to death by these other guys, like, would that have been a kinder ending than what did end up happening, even though Eren saved him in this moment? What happens to him later is brutal. I don't know. But, like, that's, you know, that's, like, the world, right? And that's kind of, like, even what Eren has seen since his childhood. The first two episodes we open and we see what happens to Eren's mom, and, like, his whole life crumbles and falls apart. And even before that happens, he likens himself to like cattle in a field being ready for, like, just waiting for that pin to drop, and like trying to get away from that. And he said from the beginning, like, he's gonna kill every last one of them. And we think it's one thing at the beginning, it ends up being something else. I don't know. Is that freedom? Is him achieving that goal freedom? I think he has to convince himself that it is, or else there's no point.
Oh yeah, this show is so complex. There's so many facets to really every scene, and I think that's why this little moment is so important. As I was writing this outline, I was like, how am I going to fit this in here? I'm really glad that we ended up keeping that part, because that was a really good dichotomy from both of you. I liked that a lot. Kind of going forward, this episode is just all over the place, so if we're also all over the place, sorry about it, but it is very difficult to talk about this episode in a linear format. So even as this scene prevails, we know the rumbling is still happening, right? And we flash over to the scouts and the warriors who are left, and they are still working on the airboat, right? So they are still attempting to get that boat fueled, get that thing off the ground. The Azumabito clan is there, Ani's there. We got the entire squad with us. Unfortunately, as they're working to fuel the plane, Flock shows up, somehow, like, barely hanging on for life, and he takes a pretty big shot at that fuel tank. I'm just going to go ahead and say it. Fuck that man.
Okay, listen. In this house, we hate Flock. However, what I am going to say about Flock is that he has an extraordinarily interesting character arc in this show, knowing that we started with him earlier in season 3, I believe, with Erwin, like, leading that charge, and he is one of the only survivors of the Beast Titan attack, and he was, like, understandably so, but, like, one of the biggest cowards in the entire scene, and it just really was, like, sheer luck that he happened to not completely get his shit wrecked. So now, like, I think having had that brush with death, and then also now being given something to believe in that could, like, fight against what caused all of that in the first place, because we know that was essentially, like, the Marleyan soldiers and, like, Marley itself that caused all of that devastation that he had seen, and he was presented with a way to counter that. And he believed in Eren, and so I think that him, like, literally clinging for life to that ship just to have, like, one last chance to take them out for, like, the thing that he personally believed in is, like, a massive jump in character development for him, and, like, in dedication and belief. And even though I don't agree with what he was supporting, like, in bravery for what he did believe in, like, it's kind of wild to see how much he developed in one season.
As someone who just watched all of season 3 yesterday, Flock is a very interesting character. I will absolutely agree. In this house, we hate Flock. I hate that guy. But kind of like what Emily said, and I feel like I'm probably going to bring this up nearly every single question, because the thing with Attack on Titan is that, like I said, like, who's the real enemy? What is right or wrong? Nobody knows, not the characters. I don't even think Isayama knew what was right or wrong when he was writing it. Like, we're feeling his confusion that he wrote himself. But Flock is someone who was a coward. He was absolutely, when the suicide charge started, and just in general throughout that entire battle in Shiganshina, was the one who was always crying on his knees, not able to do anything, just scared, and all these other characters are trying to get him to like move forward, and he is the sole survivor of that suicide charge, the sole survivor. And what's interesting is he was very, very much on the side of bringing Irvin back in that situation, you know, with the Armin versus Erwin. And he always said it was because Erwin was the devil that would make a difference. Because Erwin was always that character that, like, we loved, but he was willing to make any type of sacrifice possible for the greater good, essentially, and to save humanity within the walls. And of course, Erwin never lived to see that there was actually humanity outside of the walls. He believed that to be true, but he never saw that confirmation. So, like, another question is, would Erwin support the rumbling? What would the story have done if he had been the one to survive that and Armin was it? That can be another episode for an entire, like a whole episode we could talk about that. But Flock has always believed in the people that are willing to abandon everything to protect them, essentially, you know? And the thing is, like, if you look at the Alliance side, they're abandoning everything, but they're doing it to protect humanity as a whole because they don't believe in the slaughter of innocent lives along with the people that have oppressed them. Flock is more willing to slaughter innocent lives for his own people. So it's more selfish, and that's why, like, I disagree with him more than I disagree with the Alliance, because, you know, he's just choosing to give up all these innocent lives so that him and his people can live happily, which I get. Like, you've lived your entire life oppressed like this, like, you're going to create monsters like this. But going from the cowardly man that he was in season 3 to, you know, giving his life essentially for the cause that he believes in is, I think Flock has one of the best character arcs in the entire show. And that might be extremely weird for me to say, but I was thinking about it last night, and I think this show does trade story development for character development in some aspects. I think Flock is one of the ones where he really just went from a coward to someone who was so convicted that he was willing to die for his cause. And while I hate him, I think he's interesting. All of my answers are very long-winded. I apologize. I will slow down.
I don't think there's a way to answer questions shortly with this show. Two things about this. I think there's a quote from Hamilton that actually brings this to light really well. It's in the very end where Hamilton is deciding between which horse to back, Aaron Burr or Thomas Jefferson, for the next presidency. And his line is, "I'll vote for Jefferson. Jefferson has beliefs, Burr has none." And I think that is really important. And nonetheless, like, is it more respectable to be the coward who is backing the horse of the winning side, or is to be at least stand by something and then be able to say, I made a choice and I tried my best? I think that's kind of what Flock's story is meant to tell us. And I think that's really interesting of that kind of entire character, is because he does come off as a very hated character, as he does a lot of stuff, and his own convictions definitely counteract and contradict a lot of the bonds he was building through season 4 with the rest of the scouts. So it's definitely a tough grapple with it. And even still, he makes the shot, but they still kind of are able to repair the boat a little bit, only with the help of a certain someone that bought them back a lot of time by making probably the largest sacrifice of the show, and also probably the hardest death of the show. Oh, Hannah went off camera because she's not doing too well. Hanji Zoe hits the Titans with the well-known Hanji Kamikagura and takes down what seems to be at least 10 Colossals, if not more. Let's just go ahead and revisit this entire scene.
You did not.
I did just call it the Hanji Kamikagura.
I mean, thank you for doing that. Hanji Kamikagura. Anyway, okay.
Titan dance.
Thank you for that slight bit of comedy, because this scene absolutely wrecks me from start to finish. as our resident Hanji stan, I think we all here know Hanji is my favorite character. I'm fine. I'm not fine. And granted, going into this episode, I knew it was gonna happen. I'd read the manga, like, you know, I knew this was gonna happen. But something about seeing it in the anime, and this is true for so many different shows that I've, well, okay, there's only one other show that I've watched that I've read the manga for. So Hanji making this ultimate sacrifice for the cause is just like what Flock did. First of all, I want to pull the parallel to that, is that Hanji is essentially doing the exact same thing that Flock did. Hanji is sacrificing their life because they believe so much in the cause of what the Alliance is doing to protect humanity that they are willing, they know, like, Hanji knew death was going to happen. There was no way they were going to get out of that. So it's like, it's same with Flock. Flock held on to that ship knowing he was going to die. Like, there was no way he was going to survive that. So at this point, Hanji can see that everyone's going to die if the Titans aren't held back in this situation. And what a bang Hanji goes out with. I will say, in the anime, I realized just how much damage that Hanji did. In the manga, it was kind of hard to tell. I felt like nothing really happened. Like, there wasn't much of a big difference in the Titans being stopped, but Hanji ended up killing a lot of them. So it's interesting because in this house we love and adore Hanji, but how different is what they're doing from Flock? They're just on the opposite side and just believe in what they believe in. So, and I'm not, like, this might be really interesting to come out of the mouth of the person who loves Hanji. Like, can you imagine if I sat here and said, like, is Tanjiro actually right? Like, people would think that I literally was not me. So, you know, but again, this is the show. This is how Attack on Titan is, and that doesn't change the fact that I absolutely sob. And this is the reason why rewatching it in order to record this podcast was only my second time watching this episode as someone who rewatches things like crazy, because it's too hard for me to watch Hanji's death.
Yeah, this scene sucks. In the best way. In the best way. Like, I'm gonna go back full circle to what I said at the beginning. Remembering watching episode 1 and, like, these characters that I have essentially grown up with for the last 10 years and losing a lot of them along the way. This, for me, was maybe not the first show, but definitely one of the first animes for myself where they had proven from the very beginning that, like, nobody was safe in this show. Yeah. And that differs a lot from anime that had been coming out and starting around that same time. It's like, maybe we'll lose, like, a character here and there, but very seldom is it one of the big ones, or very seldom is it, like, permanent, like there's some kind of loophole that would let somebody come back in some way. So this was like, we know that nobody is safe, and that makes it really hard because you really do come to, like, adore and care for these people, especially a character like Hanji, because Hanji was one of the most fun characters in the show. Obviously, we went through something similar with Sasha last year, technically same season. That's a different question. But it's like, yeah, like, two of the characters that probably brought the biggest smiles to our faces because they were able to make the most light of the circumstances that exist in this show. Like, that's hard. It's really, really hard. And Sasha was hard because that was, like, not her choice, and that was not what any of us wanted. That choice was taken from her. This one is a little bit different because this is very much Hanji's agency and Hanji's choice to go. And, you know, they know that this moment has come. That's what they say to Levi right before they take charge and, like, go kill all these colossal titans, by the way, which entire teams of scouts couldn't take down. One in previous episodes. It took 3 seasons to even get close to one. They take down 10. And it's what they say to Levi. It's like, for me, it's the dialogue with Levi. And I love Hanji. Levi's my favorite character. So it's rough in, like, a multitude of ways to see this little tiny exchange happen because they both have experienced loss even more than what the scouts are at, like, the next generation that they've trained that are now taking over. we've seen the piles of bodies. Erwin used to talk about the same thing when he was alive. He would say, like, in that last moment, he says something to Levi, like, can you see them? Can you see, like, the fallen comrades? Which was also hard. And of course, Levi is haunted by that all the time because he's the only one that, like, makes it out in, like, 90% of those circumstances. So now Hanji, who has made it all the way there together with him, is essentially saying, like, it's time for me to go. And the words that are unspoken there but that exist is like, and I'm leaving you too. And that sucks. That really sucks. But again, they make light of it. They're like, well, I really want to go out in a cool way. Please don't take this from me. I'm trying to look like a badass for our students. And boy, do they, because this is like one of the most beautiful fight scenes. Maybe the only beautiful one. I feel like that word is like, everything's well animated. Everything pays off really well. Beast Titan versus Levi is probably my favorite still, as far as like feeling hype for it, because this one is so tinged with melancholy. And yet this is probably the most beautiful fight in Attack on Titan, even though it's like extraordinarily hard to watch. And the use of the OST here is so chef's kiss. But the minute it kicked in, like, that's exactly when the tears begin as well, because it's an enormous contrast from the last time that we've heard it. So, yeah, I don't know. Fucking Isayama. I'm tired
And
of
Mappa.
this.
Both of them.
I'm tired of it. That's too damn bad. You're gonna kill Titans, boy.
God.
Oh no. Yeah, that scene was definitely very difficult. Hanji is a character beloved by all. I remember the first time that I watched that episode, I watched it with a friend, Danielle, my husband Johnny, and her boyfriend Vince, and everyone in the room was so shocked at what happened. Hanji, minutes before they had made this decision for themselves and the team, was still goofing off. Like, Hanji was like, peek, let me ride on your back as we go attack the Titan. Still giving the levity that they had brought throughout the entire show to their final moments. It's a real demonstration of who Hanji is and the impact that they had on the rest of the cast. I think one of my favorite points in this scene is when Hanji was floating above these Titans in like this bird's eye view where they can see this entire sea of Titans in front of them, yet Hanji is still amazed by how Titans fascinate them. And I think that's something that really is amazing about their character, is that Hanji is someone who is relentless, yet still someone who can show compassion and like have some sort of like soft side. I think they are one of the few characters who I think is like, if they were in the real world, they would be approachable. So that makes their death so much more difficult as one of the few characters who made us feel a little bit more warm on the inside. And watching them fight to the very end was so difficult because of how much joy they brought us throughout the show. So definitely something that strikes home a lot for a lot of folks. Before our royalty Hanji made their exit, though, they did two things that are huge, and we can't skip these. They named Armin as the next commander of the Scouts, as well as getting Levi to say the classic line for the first time in the show, Shinzo Sasageo. Which was more impactful to you, and what do you think of how the moment was presented?
I mean, both are extremely impactful. Like, I have a personal affinity towards one, but like both are impactful, and we kind of knew that both were coming the minute that we saw that this decision was made. I mean, to me, I felt like it was kind of clear that Armin was eventually going to be the next captain of the Scouts as soon as Levi made that choice last season. You know, like as badass as Levi is, like he has no interest in being the actual captain. I don't think he's better used for his extreme dexterity and strength. I don't think that's something that he ever wanted, and after Hanji, it has to come from the next group of the recruits and the scouts, and Armin is so incredibly smart. So it feels, again, very bittersweet in this moment, because I think that this is when the reality sets in for our little crew that's out there, and Hanji is like so nonchalant about it. Like, well, I'll be going now. Armin, you're in charge. Levi, see you later. And they never miss a beat. The attitude doesn't change. It's not melancholy for them, I don't think. They've accepted what is going to happen, but everyone else has to reckon with what this means in this moment, because the weight of those words is settling in. And so, like, as smart as Armin is, I think even now he still suffers with self-doubt a lot, because, again, there's so much gray area in this show that, like, even if he makes an incredibly intelligent choice, who knows if it's right. It still could be the complete wrong choice, and he's definitely done some shit too. You know, we've seen Armin have to, like, step up and do some crazy stuff in this show as well, even though he is, or at least was, one of the most soft-spoken, kind of wimpy characters in terms of physical brute strength. He's come a long way as well. Again, I touched on this in the last question, but for me, it's the scene with Levi. It's like the continued pervasive loss that just, like, he's sitting on a pile of ghosts, is like the way that it's perceived. And he's like not really a sentimental or like a cheesy guy, so hearing him say finally like the phrase and seeing that in the manga was what broke me the first time. It was like, I can't change your mind. I'm not gonna try. Give your heart. But what broke me even more, before we move on from this, is that I'm not gonna say that like Hanji's death wasn't graphic necessarily, but I also think that the moment of death that we saw, like the actual minute that it happens, was the gentlest in the entire show. Compared even earlier in this episode to somebody like Ramsey and what that looked like in the manga, that was like horrific and gruesome. Obviously, we see Hanji plummeting, like lit aflame, but I think it's insinuated that the thing that actually kills them is like being trampled by the rumbling after they fall. However, we do not actually see that. What we see is Hanji waking up in the footprint. And when she wakes up and she's there with like all the rest of the fallen comrades, like looking as they did in their prime, and her essentially, or them essentially being like, did you see that? Did you see what I did? Wasn't that so cool? Did I do a good job? I was gone. I was gone in that moment, because everybody is there. Everybody is there with them, and that was like thank God that at least death can be gentle for Hanji and for these other people that we lost a while ago in the show, because nothing else is.
Yeah, every moment of the show is so brutal, and this is brutal. You know, this whole experience with watching Hanji do this is brutal for us, and it's very clearly depicted as brutal for every character. You know, we see all the characters reacting, and I love Hanji, so like it's hard just in general to watch Hanji die, but I'm always someone who loses it when it comes to the people around that person reacting to their death. And the waterworks, the sobbing starts with Levi. I think that, backing up a little bit with naming Armin as the next commander, again, I agree with Emily on that. I saw that coming from the time that Levi picked Armin over Irvin. I figured that it was going to happen, but I also was like, well, Hanji's the commander though, so I was in denial that would mean that they would probably die before the end of the story. You know, Armin has always been painted as like the weak one of the trio. You know, you have the super strong one, you have the super passionate one, and then you have the super smart one, right? And Armin was always kind of a step behind, even though Aaron's fighting abilities were not that good. He at least had the heart and the drive to keep going. Armin was always a little bit more scared, a little bit more timid, but super, super smart. And I think that being the commander is exactly the position he was designed to be in. Levi wasn't ever supposed to be commander because he is like Mikasa. he's a really, really strong fighter, and a commander is usually a little bit less in the battlefield and a little bit more making those decisions. So yeah, you need the smarter people in charge of that. Not to say that Levi isn't smart, but he just doesn't like use his brain the way that, you know, Erwin, Hanji, and Armin all did. When Hanji goes to Levi and, you know, is like, I'm shaking, you know, this is the moment that I've been waiting for, like, don't try to stop me. And Levi just says Shinso Sasageo, and Hanji's like, I think that's the first time you've ever said that. That is probably the moment that I can't do it. Like, I can't. Like, that moment right there is why I haven't watched this episode until now since it came out, because it's like it wrecks me. And I have to apologize because when I said when we can't believe I'm saying this, when we recapped the season finale Demon Slayer and I said I haven't sobbed that way over a TV show in a very long time, I was wrong. Because I might have sobbed more over Attack on Titan in March, because I knew that it was actually the end for Hanji. In Demon Slayer, I knew Nezuko was going to be okay, but you know, so I have to go back. I have to retract. But just Levi is such a tragic character because he's lost literally everyone at this point. Like, Hanji is what he had left, because yes, he has the recruits, he has like our squad, but they were the recruits. They were like, they showed up a few years ago, and I think he cares about them a lot, like a dad practically, but Hanji was the last one of his like generation essentially. And I think he was a bit more attached to Hanji than he was to a lot of the other characters. He was very attached to Erwin too, and that was very tough on him as well. But to see Levi react to like his last like buddy giving, you know, sacrificing themselves, that is what kills me. And then afterwards, after all is said and done, we see everyone crying, and he's not crying because it's still Levi. But then he says like, bye Hanji, watch us. And that's like, it's kind of cleared up for me, and then I lose it all over again, and I literally have to pause it before we move on because I cannot handle the emotions that are going on. Jakobone crying also gets me too, because he worked very closely with Hanji. It's just so like, everything about that moment, from the fact that Hanji is my favorite character, and like Emily said, the deaths get harder as the story progresses, because we get like, we know these characters better than we know Levi Squad in season 1, right? Like, that was still hard, but like, this is a character that brings us joy, brings us our much needed comedic relief often. This character everyone loves, so to watch them do that, and then also the music, the reaction of the characters around them, it's a 10 out of 10 scene, even though I literally can't see it through my tears practically. And it's beautifully done. It's the way Hanji should have gone out if they had to die. So the show has wrecked me in so many different ways.
Damn, both of you had such like charged answers. I feel bad for asking all these questions. I feel like I'm really like, this is more like a therapy session than it is a podcast episode. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to do this to everybody.
Everyone who has watched Attack on Titan absolutely needs therapy.
Oh,
Can we get a group discount? We need an Attack on Titan and a Demon Slayer group therapy discount.
Oof. Anyone running a special? All right. Well, for me personally, I will say it is getting Levi to say the Shinso Sasageo line. You guys really articulated it well, and I know there's still a lot more we want to work through, so I'm going to keep this a little bit more succinct. But thinking about the number of times that Levi has seen other people do it and been the cold, callous but executory person, I think it's very interesting that he finally opens up and says this, and like Emily said, be the cheesy one to say this in kind of as a final present to Hanji, if you will. So with that being said, I think a little bit of this comes at Levi's, like Emily said, like his final buddy leaving him, right? And so I think this is really a tough moment to kind of watch happen, as Levi is really carrying on. And I think in season 3, when Irvin said, like, do all of the hearts that they offered up mean nothing? He is the last one carrying those with through this final battle, which makes it so difficult. I think that's definitely a good point to bring up. It's definitely a good moment. Armin being commander, I think, somewhat, maybe it was just me, but us, but I definitely thought it was going to be Levi that was picked as commander. Maybe I've just been oblivious the entire show. Yeah, I think realistically, Armin was someone who is very smart, but I didn't think he had have the courage to be commander. And I think this moment is also important because I think Kanji kind of forced him in that position. So with that, I think Armin was really someone who needed that push from someone who believed in him. I think that's why I like Armin, is because I definitely relate to like being in these situations of like, I need other people to help me, right? Like Zenitsu, Armin, Luck from Black Clover, all these like off the walls characters. That's me. Okay. So that's kind of all we have, because that's the end of chapter 1, the rumbling. So we're gonna pull a mappa and we're gonna split this into 2 parts. So that is all we have for today's episode. With that being said, definitely give us a like on TikTok, give us a follow, right? We're going to go ahead and give you a second part soon. We don't want to break this into a 2-hour episode because that's really what would have happened if Attack on Titan released all of this at once. So we're not going to do that to you. We're going to pull a mappa here. So with that being said, definitely listen in, subscribe. If you're watching us on YouTube, drop a comment. Drop a comment for what you'd want to see next, as Shibuya is starting next week. So booyah, Shibuya, baby! And of course, we can't forget it. Even though it's Attack on Titan, I still gotta let you know. Umai.
Umai.
Umai, knowing that the things that get eaten the most in the show are people?
Those Titans really say umai.
Tag yourself, I'm the one that runs like this.
I'm the one that stands like this.
Isn't there a Titan that falls?
Oh, wait, that's me. Oh my god, that's me. I'm the one that can't make it down a mountain without falling. Slip and fall.
Oh my god.
Umai.
Umai. Shinzo Sasage. Whatever, you know.